Venetian ambassadors used to whisper, half in awe and half in fear, that during the final decades of the 16th century, the real throne of the Ottoman Empire was not the gilded divan standing proudly in the second courtyard of Topkapi Palace. That visible seat of power was only a stage prop. The true throne was hidden deep within the imperial harem, behind a delicately carved golden lattice where a single cushioned sofa rested in permanent shadow. From that quiet, perfumed corner, two women guided the fate of the most terrifying and powerful empire the world had ever known. While armies marched and borders bled, the Sultan himself slowly dissolved into Cypriot wine, Persian opium, and the soft arms of slave girls whose beauty cost more than the yearly tax revenue of entire provinces. At first glance, this appears to be the story of Sultan Murad III. In reality, Murad was little more than a drifting silhouette, a crowned observer in his own reign. The true story belongs to two lionesses who circled one another for 21 years, tearing flesh not with claws but with patience, calculation, and silence, until victory itself became indistinguishable from destruction. Nurbanu Sultan was born Cecilia Venier Baffo, opening her eyes for the first time on the deck of a Venetian vessel rocking on the Adriatic. Fate showed her no mercy. She was seized by the corsairs of Barbarossa, dragged across the sea, and sold in the slave markets of Istanbul for the price of 3 Arabian horses. From that humiliation rose a woman sharper than steel. Years passed, and the frightened girl became the most powerful Valid Sultan the Ottoman harem had ever known. Death lived comfortably in her smile. Ice flowed through her veins, and mercy never learned her name. Facing her was Safiye Sultan, born Safiye Baffo in the cold mountains of Albania. She was captured at 13, stripped of her past, and delivered into the harem where she was renamed Safiye, the Pure One. There was nothing innocent about her gaze. Her eyes were an unnatural green, bright, venomous, unforgettable. Anyone who met them felt watched, measured, and quietly threatened. The walls of Topkapi had never reflected eyes like hers. Between these two women stood Murad III, weak of will, dreamy by nature, and utterly enslaved by pleasure. He inherited the empire at the height of its glory, when its banners stretched across continents. He left it fractured, leaking gold through every crack, its foundations trembling under the weight. Everything changed on the night of 11 December 1574. Across the Bosphorus, the bells of Galata rang like funeral drums, their echoes sliding across dark water. Inside Topkapi Palace, silence fell so heavily it felt as though the walls themselves had stopped breathing. Sultan Selim II, mocked even in life as Selim the Sot, had collapsed in the marble hammam, drunk beyond sense. His skull split on stone, the smell of raqqa clinging to his body, his corpse still warm when black eunuchs ran barefoot through the corridors toward the harem. Nurbanu Sultan was already awake. She did not scream, she did not mourn. She closed her eyes, whispered a prayer, and spoke a command that would shape the next century. Every gate was locked, every passage sealed. The keys were hung around the neck of Gazanfer Aya. Her message was absolute. If her son did not sit upon the throne before sunrise, no head within the palace would remain on its shoulders. Before dawn broke, the frail and poetic prince of Manisa was dragged from sleep. He was dressed in ancestral robes heavy with history, girded with the sword of Osman, and declared Sultan Murad III, while servants still scrubbed his father's blood from the hammam floor. That same night, in a modest chamber of the harem, 18-year-old Safiye awoke with sudden clarity. She had already given Murad a son. She understood power better than most men who wore turbans of office. She knew that whoever controlled this night would control the empire for decades. Wrapped in crimson silk, she walked barefoot through dark corridors until she reached the Valid Sultan's door. The chief eunuch barred her path. Safiya smiled, pressed a heavy diamond into his palm, and whispered that the Valide's new daughter had come to kiss her hand. Inside, Nurbanu burned letters in a brazier, the flames dancing across her sharp features. Safiya knelt and dared to call her mother. Silence stretched between them like a drawn blade. Then Nurbanu laughed softly and spoke in flawless Italian, warning that this little serpent would either become her death or her sharpest weapon. At that instant, the silent war began, a war without armies or cannons, fought instead with poison, perfume, rumors, and silk bowstrings. Years passed. Safiye mastered foreign diplomacy. Gifts crossed seas. English ambassadors entered the harem. Power shifted behind the golden lattice. Nurbanu watched and wrote desperate letters, fighting to preserve the old order she had built. Then fire came. Flames devoured the harem. Smoke filled the cages. 19 princes burned alive. Officially, it was an accident. Everyone knew it was not. Murad shattered, drowned himself in narcotics, and poured unimaginable wealth into private palaces while the empire weakened. Desperate to secure her position, Safiye committed her greatest crime. A child was exchanged. A life was erased in silence. A new prince was presented to the court, but the eyes betrayed the lie. Suspicion spread. Accusations followed. Safiye was exiled. 2 years later, Nurbanu died. Poison or fate? No one knew. That same night, Safiye returned, slid the ring onto her finger, and claimed the throne hidden behind the lattice. After Murad's death, Safiye washed the harem in blood. Yet the child she had stolen and raised became her greatest danger. On a silent night, the same mother who had created him ordered his death. The 21-year war ended with no survivors. Only stories remained. And an empire began its slow, glittering descent, while the dark waters of the Bosphorus carried